welcome to the Integrate This EdTech Podcast. I'm David Berner, joined by co-host Jeremy Mikla. And right above us, you see an amazing guest we have with us today, Dr. Jorge Valenzuela. Does a ton of work in project-based learning and all sorts of different things now with AI. And so we just want to welcome you, Jorge, to the podcast. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
And just to kind of kick things off, we usually like to give the guests a little, let our listeners hear a little bit about how they got to where they got to today. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Because you've been in IT and now you're in education, PBL, and all sorts of stuff. Can you tell us kind of the story of Jorge?
Yeah, so I began my life in New York in the mid-1970s. I just dated myself. Like my son says, I was born in the late 1900s. And I was really good in school. But I came from a very difficult background, had a rough start, was in the foster care system. And I ended up going to college, of course. And that really helped me out because even though my major was in education, it was computer science. So that taught me how to think in algorithms, which now I speak in frameworks. So I didn't know that world was preparing me for this. I started computer science, but like you said, I was in IT, worked in New York a couple of years. And then my aunt, who was a teacher, encouraged me to try teaching. And at first I was like, I don't want to do that. And she was like, why? I said, it doesn't pay enough. And she said, what if I got you a job teaching summer school for 5 weeks for $36.50 an hour? And you only have to work 5 hours a day and for 4 days a week. So after doing the math, it was like $700. I was like, I can do that. So I started doing that. And I realized very, very quickly that I should be doing this for an entire career, not knowing I would be a business owner, entrepreneur, and all of those things, speaking around the country. But I just felt that I thought that my life was difficult. And what I realized is that I was neglected, but not really abused in the way that some of the kids I met were. And I wanted to help them, and I wanted to help them make career connections. Those of us that understand computer science or have studied it, we know that computing is in everything, And I knew that would be the future. So I became a tech ed teacher, started in Virginia. I had moved down south, and I was in the classroom a few years. I went and got my admin's license, did my master's, and I don't know how. I remember walking out of my internship to be principal. It was summer school. And I remember telling my wife, I am not doing that job. I will not be a principal and have to start out as an AP and be focused on referrals and cafeteria duty and bus duty when I can have a part-time job and make what those guys make. So I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And then maybe 6 months later, the guy that supervised tech ed and computer science in Richmond City Public Schools, he retired or moved on. And people started asking me, you should apply. So I was like, why should I apply? They said, well, you have the teaching ability, but you don't understand how administration and budgets and things like that work, but we can teach you those things. So I went into the interview, and I wasn't dead set on having the job, but I wanted them to know who I was. So if something ever came up in the future, I would be considered. Well, anyway, make a long story short, I ended up getting the job. And there I learned how an entire district works, how all the fundings work, how all the departments work, how all the core content areas work. And we had a superintendent and a director of CNI that wanted to make sure that all 50 schools were fully accredited. So what they did was made sure that every instructional leader in the district partnered with school leaders in all the schools, all 50 schools. And every quarter, we had to do something called instructional rounds, where we used learning walks to visit each of the classrooms. And what happened was we got to know our students, our teachers on a very deep level, on a personal level. So when we designed all of the professional learning, it was designed as an intervention for the solutions that we were looking for. So if the solutions were to improve math and reading and writing or morale, we would have to investigate what has been done in those fields. Who are the top speakers? Who are the top coaches? And sometimes it would be folks in our district. Well, anyway, we started doing that around 2007. And in 2010, we got all of the 50 schools fully accredited. And I was a part of that team. Then I realized as I was working in STEM and computer science, we were asking our teachers to do things that we didn't know how to do ourselves in the classroom. So I sought out a organization that can make me an expert in project-based learning. I learned about the Buck Institute for Education, which is now known as PBL Works. I signed up for an academy. And just make a long story short, they invited me to be part of the national faculty. It was a 14-month boot camp. I did that. And in those 14 months, I became a master teacher. And because I had worked in that district job where we visited all of the classrooms and I had to design PL for everyone, I already knew about the content areas. I already knew about CTE. I already knew about computer science, which was the big push at that time. So I was able to help all teachers. Well, anyway, they started sending me out all around the country, and I was training entire faculties, entire staffs on how to do PBL, well, how to teach what they teach, but in the context of a project. I got into the PhD program, and then all of a sudden, all of the practices in PBL and instructional rounds, learning walks, data collections, action research, all of the knowledge that I already had really became crystallized by the research I had to do in the PhD program. And during COVID, well, about 5 years before COVID, I was on the road every summer, every week, in a different school, in a different district. And then in 2017, I went full-time on my own. When COVID hit, no one knew who I was, but I had a lot of experience already facilitating workshops, already working with admin and with teachers. So what happened was when all the major conferences like ISTE went virtual, teachers wanted to hear the experts. And that's how it happened. I did the Summer Learning Academy for ISTE in 2020. And from there, I went from 10 days a month to 25 days a month. And I rode a wave all the way into 2024. And it's not quite like it used to be, but now I'm doing keynotes and more major stages and things like that.
Yeah, and as you look back at it, I mean, it sounds like, as you described it, like a lot of this just seemed to kind of happen naturally.
Mhm.
And it's almost like you were really working hard on focusing on schools in Virginia, and then it just kind of flowed into the work that you would be doing in your PhD work. Is that a good way to describe it? Or like, as you look back, is that what it seems like?
I always try to find alignment in everything I do. Alignment in my personal life, God, self, family, friends, relationships, right? And I look alignment in the work I do. If you really look at my work, it focuses on instructional innovation, improving instruction, which means that we have to observe instruction. You observe it and you start with your core instruction, your core teaching, your foundational things. But as you improve that, you include innovation, project-based learning, EdTech, artificial intelligence integration, but it really starts with teaching and learning. Becoming a master teacher has helped me keep that at the focus, at the forefront, and therefore I can add things on top of it.
Kind of one of the things that I thought when I moved into this position that I'm in now, and and David and I have talked about this before, is that we're not in positions anymore where we're both classroom teachers,
Mhm.
every day face in front of the students. But we work with then teachers to help them, better improve their instruction, to reach a wider audience than maybe what we could even just in one classroom. And it seems like you have that experience as you go, and just even as you were talking about your instructional rounds, and I was kind of picturing that like a doctor and their attendees, and they're walking around checking on all the patients in all of the different rooms, and it becomes that learning experience, for everyone else that is part of that. And that's kind of what I'm picturing as you're going around. And like you said, I could really see how that, you do get to know then those instructors that you're dealing with on much more a personal level, which then when you bring to them an idea for something, you where, let's because you talked about it here, so I want to go down that road of project-based learning. And
Mhm.
you've written a couple of different books on PBL and in even PBL Plus. So I guess kind
Mhm.
of what I'm kind of curious is, what is the plus? How does that come in? And I'm kind of thinking like you have this relationship already with the people that you're presenting this stuff to. Like, how receptive do they become when you add that plus part into it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So project-based learning plus is my brand of PBL. That's number one. And the plus refers to life skills and what's happening in education right now. So what that means is I've had 10 years of doing PBL nationally, and all those data collections have informed the plus. Now, the plus can be what life skills kids need, beginning with knowledge of self, then emotional intelligence, and then with career readiness. All kids are not the same. So the part of the life skills that they would need would be the one that we've surveyed them and the parents, and we know that they're interested in, instead of pushing the same thing on every kid. Then also in education, things always change. We were focused on SEL back during the pandemic. Now we want kids to learn AI literacy. So those things all fit into the plus, whatever the plus is. So we're keeping project based learning as a pedagogy. We don't change that, right? We want authenticity, reflection, accomplishment, all the things we know work, public product, you name it. But the plus is just what's happening in education and what kids really need. And that's where I'm focused. I look at my own journey. I was very compliant in school. I was a really good kid. I did everything I was told. I went to college. I got the 9 to 5. I got all the degrees. I bought a house. I got married. I did everything I was supposed to do. And then at the age of 35, my stepdad walks into my house and we spend a weekend together. And at the end, this guy looks me in the face and says, George, if I was 35, I couldn't have advised you. And because I reflect, I sat in my bed that night and said to myself, he thinks it's a compliment, but I feel like I wasted my time in listening to all these adults who don't know what they're doing either. And now I'm an adult. Imagine if someone in middle school or high school would have asked me, what do you want to do? What is the impact you want to make in the world? What are the problems you want to solve? I wouldn't have been where I'm at. So I decided at 35 years old that I am listening to me now. I am focusing on what I want to do. I wasn't sure what that wasn't sure, but I knew that it was helping people. And read a book through, I read a book, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And he said, whatever you're meant to do, a version of that is where you are right now. Because life happens for you, not necessarily to you. So I knew that it would be helping people in education, but how would I do that? So it was very simple. I'm responsible for X amount of people. In my situation, it was 40 people in tech ed, computer science, and then an entire district that we worked on as a team. I just became an expert at the things I needed to help those people. I began there and took those same principles and applied it to all facets of my life. So then eventually, now I'm 51. Now think of all those years of wanting to help and learning the things that the people I'm responsible for need the most.
And that seems to me very much like it aligns almost perfectly with what a classroom teacher faces with their students in their room. And you just extrapolate that down to that level. And that teacher then needs to become that expert of where their students are at and the expert of how to get those students the learning that they need in order to be successful, to be able to set up that type of life that you're talking about.
Yeah. And if you look at all my data, like, so I run everything through either ChatGPT or Gemini, and all my data collections have a qualitative piece where all participants get to write down what they think, feedback, things like that about the workshop or what they experienced. But then there's a quantitative piece that uses Likert scales. And I went through like hundreds of people, maybe a couple of thousand from last summer. And I looked at all the data. On the quantitative side, I was at a 4.9 out of 5. And when I looked at what people wrote down, I asked ChatGPT, what are the themes here? And it said 2 things: emotionally compelling. When you speak, people get emotionally compelled. Something inside them says, I need to listen here. And second, actionable strategies and tools and resources that they can take back and use immediately. Now, I can't say that I was that type of teacher in the classroom, or even as a facilitator in the beginning. I had to develop into that. But my intention was, like you said, is to think this way. What do the kids I teach now, what do the adults I need? What do the adults I support need in order for me to help them learn? And that's it.
Right. And so that seems to me kind of like if you're thinking about it, I'm sure you have to come across some staff, some teachers that are a little bit resistant. Like, I can't do that. That's way too much. I've got 35 different kids, and that's just 1 hour of the day, and if I'm a high school teacher or middle school teacher, that, times 5 or 6, right? And so the pushback that you get, has to be like, I can't do that with everything else that I need to do. I have these standards to cover. I've got my year, divided up into different units that all need to be addressed within that time frame. So is that the way then that you try to engage that teacher to, that emotional connection that you're talking about, in addition to, the wanting to do what's right for the students? And then I guess there's almost an AI, obviously, kind of tied to this too. Is that what you can now sell teachers on, that can be your assistant in helping you identify those needs for students and be able to personalize it individually for them?
All right. So the first thing I tell teachers is this. Well, I deliver 2 very different workshops. If I'm at a conference, people are there because they want to see me. So that workshop or that keynote, I'm flowing, I'm killing it. Everyone's into it. Everyone's laughing. Everyone is really enjoying themselves, and they're getting a lot of takeaways. But then, like you mentioned, at the district level, in schools, it's very different now. A lot of teachers don't want to be there in professional learning. You just don't. So you walk in, they don't make eye contact. They don't speak unless if they're spoken to, things like that. And before COVID, we had people like that, but they weren't as vocal as they are now. Okay. So I automatically do 2 things. I break up my audience into 3 segments. And these are dummy numbers, but I got this from a success coach, James Taylor. 10% want to work with you. They understand the assignment. They are ready to do the work, and they are ready. This is not my target audience. This is not who I'm preparing for. Then there's another 10%. They don't want to be there. They are committed to misunderstanding every word I say. I can't say that they don't like me because they don't know me, but they definitely have a bias. And the bias is probably professional learning. They just don't want to do it. My message is not for them either. They're not my core audience. They already decided that they're tuned out. There's an 80%. And these folks are mostly on the fence. They've had a lot of bad professional learning. They have a lot of competing initiatives. They have a lot of standards that they have to teach. They have a whole bunch of things that they have to do, and they don't even have time to meet with me today. But they love our profession. They care about doing the best thing for children. And all they have to see in us as we do this, they have to see that we care also, and that we know what we're doing and talking about, and we have receipts. So I always begin with this. I'm going to show you a lot of instructional strategies, and I'm going to model them. But you have expertise too. If you're already doing something that is getting the same effect and impact of what I'm doing, don't throw away what you want to do. Do what you're doing that's already working. But if there's a piece that you see here that's going to improve what you're doing, then let's try that out. And you have to try everything 10 to 15 times before you fully learn it. And I don't make teachers buy my books. That's not who my client is. I write so many articles for each of those chapters that are already on Edutopia online. And I'm modeling what's happening in the article along with the research, my personal experience, and then the actionable steps that they can do so they can replicate the same success in their class. When they hear it that way, there's not much you can dispute with that, unless if you just really don't want to be there. But here's the thing. The reason why they may start out having a negative attitude in the beginning, but all my data shows that it's very positive at the end. The reason why they're not with me in the beginning is because they're not with their administrators and school leaders. That's why. So I always tell my admin, hey, you're spending all this money on PL. You got to make sure that you have some conversations, mend fences, and have strong relationships with the people that you have in these sessions, because they're going to like what I'm doing, right? But the success of this initiative and these things you want to do, it depends solely on the relationships you all have. Life is all about relationships, and relationships are the most important thing in life, and in business, and in work, and in schools, in marriages, with God. Everything, it's relationship.
Yeah, that's really insightful too, because I think that one of the things that I was just thinking about as you were talking about that, George, is then anything that seems to come out of nowhere, like AI, right? That approach that you mentioned, I mean, I think it's still applicable no matter what comes up, right? Like you have that mindset of this is what people need. We need relationships, and you already kind of know based on the data, like, you know, these folks are not going to be into what you're doing. You have your 10% that love it, and then you have 80% in the middle. And I guess I'm just wondering your thoughts on, like, as because you were doing PBL keynotes and different things well before Gen AI, right? So was there any thought that came into your mind, like, no, like as you approach things, was there any shift that you had to think about just based on Gen AI being like a new thing? Or was it more like you already have the tools to apply how you want your professional learning to go? So it's really just a matter of learning about Gen AI for you, or how did that happen for you personally?
Yeah, personally, so I didn't see it coming. And you can actually look on Edutopia in December 2022, I believe it was. I wrote an article on teaching kids about AI. And it came out in December, the same time that Gen AI came out, generative AI came out. But the article was written in October, and we were saving it for CS week, which is the first week of December, sorry. So I was completely blindsided, and it was sent to me by a friend, and she said, you got to check this out. And she's a realtor. She's out of education, but she was like, you can use it to write your articles. And so I already knew that I couldn't do that, right? So I started looking at it, and I didn't. So I understood, after diving in, I understood the concept of a language model and how it was scouring the internet and getting all this data for text, video, and audio, right? So I understood how it was working, but I didn't understand how it would fit into schools or into what I do until I started to ask it about macros. Macros are your carbohydrates, protein, and fats, and how that composition of those things, how it should be aligned to whatever fitness goals you have, weight, working out, things like that. So I always had a hard time with that. But when I can take a picture of food and ChatGPT can now tell me what the macros are and what to leave off and what to add, then I started to see that it was affirming things I know, but it was filling in my blind spots. And for the first time in my life, I started to understand the effects of food on my body. And therefore, I can learn now to tailor my menu and align it to what my fitness goals are. So that was the first plus. Number two, I really focus on understanding relationships. And there's a spectrum of human psychology, human nature, and dark psychology that if people don't know, they will never be able to set boundaries from a stoic place. They'll be very reactive to everything. And when they set boundaries, they'll weaponize them. Like, imagine, I set a boundary with you. You've disrespected me, so I don't take your phone call anymore. So, or I don't engage you in the same way. Well, if you do it from a stoic lens, you're just respecting yourself and you don't let anyone disrespect you. You don't say anything. You're not upset with the person. You're using their disrespect as information. That's the stoic way. That's how I want to be. Then there's the way of very emotional. I do the same thing, but I'm hoping it hurts you. I'm hoping you feel the same pain that you feel. So I am looking to see how you're reacting. Whereas in the stoic way, I don't care. I'm setting my boundary. So anyway, when I started to learn these things on ChatGPT, I realized it was taking knowledge I already know, affirming me where I needed to be, but it was giving me new pieces. And then I was able to take a lot of the writings I already had and learn how to explain it the way the algorithms now demand, in 35 to 45 seconds using frameworks. So it took what I already did, but helped me do it better. Like you hear me speaking right now. It's very actionable. It makes sense. It's very logical. It has a cadence, all these things. Well, anyway, I started realizing that I don't have to let AI do my work. I can do my work with AI. That's it. So in working in schools, I just listened to what teachers need and then use my own intuition or my own knowledge, and I developed a conceptual framework. And if you notice, I didn't really start to talk about AI. Like, I did a few articles on how to do lesson planning, how to integrate it into PBL. I didn't try to position myself as an AI expert. A lot of people did in the beginning. I did not. I waited to see how I was going to use it, and I would see what teachers need, and then make the framework. So the first step is to learn how to tailor AI. There's a lot of different things you can do in how to tailor AI, but what people need to understand is that with technology, algorithms, AI, these things, you have to teach it what you do and how you do it. So therefore, it can give you the outputs that you need in order for you to have success with the tool. So for me, I found it in the beginning as a very affirming machine. George, you're the greatest at everything. You know everything. And so that's nonsense. So I trained it to always give me responses in stoic fashion, based on evidence and research, based on faith in God, and in logical steps, frameworks. Then I started to take all my different workflows. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a consultant. I'm a thought leader. I'm a coach. And then how to take the parts of those jobs or roles that require automation, and then train different tools through orchestration and agents to help me achieve those things faster and in a better way. So that is tailoring. Then be a creator. You're using and evaluating AI tools to make your content better, whether it's audio, visual, or text. And if you think about everything I'm saying, kids can learn how to do these things. And so can teachers. Then studying the impact of AI. AI has an impact on self, on society, and the environment. When we learn the impact by looking at data and studying data and then presenting it, then we automatically learn the work of the people that study those things in real life, which now helps you understand career pathways or a career pathway. So anyway, that's what schools were looking for or are looking for, and they need examples for that. They need examples in each of the content areas, in CTE, what that can look like. And I don't think we want our teachers to change what they teach. We just want young people to do their work with AI. And I'm biased, but I think a project, PBL, is just an easier entry point that any teacher can use, but they don't have to always use a project. But it makes it easier.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talked about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but like we'll all be at ISTE together, and you had mentioned, you'll have doing a workshop on PBL Plus with AI literacy. And so as you gave some really good examples there of like your uses of AI. And as you think about classroom teachers, what do you think the best methods are? And I know you mentioned this a little bit with projects and that, but what does it look like for you? Like if you're working with some teachers at a school and you have, we experience this frequently where you go in and obviously you have a wide range of staff, right? They all have different content areas and grade levels and all these different things, different approaches to teaching. What are your thoughts as far as when you're doing those, like a PBL Plus AI literacy workshop? What's the main thing that you want teachers to take away from that?
Well, I want them to have a framework for how AI is used in a project. So it always starts with the prompt, right? Kids prompt whatever they want to do. Let's say they want to learn about a career. How is AI used in the role of a nurse practitioner today? And how might that change in the next 5 to 10 years? Okay, so that's the prompt or the scenario. Then there's research analysis. AI identifies new tools, right? And also what the key benefits are and what the challenges are. So number one is prompting. Number two is research and analysis. And they're looking at tools. They're looking at what are the benefits and what are the challenges. Now they can do step 3, evaluate and reflect. They can evaluate for accuracy, using multiple sources to make sure that what they were told are the tools and what the benefits and what the challenges are, if that's accurate. Once they know is accurate, then they can identify roles and jobs in those things. And then step 4, they make the final product, which is a career brief or some type of presentation where they include the impact of AI, opportunities, risk, and the skills that they've learned. And if you give them a rubric where they're able to look at that process and their own process, whatever it is design thinking, Bloom's, whatever you want it to be, when they can articulate what the tool was used for and how it didn't replace thinking, it helped them in the thinking and in the content creation or the orchestration of using multiple tools, then we are developing a future ready student. And if you think about it, everything I just said, right? I do that every day. You do it every day. If you stay ready, you never have to get ready. And that's the whole point.
And is your strategy too there, as you're working with teachers, are you hoping that a lot of that is then transferable? Because, we get, specifically with AI, there's a ton of concerns around AI, like it's going to make students lazy and they're not going to, do what they should be doing. There's a whole lot of worry going on there. So is part of your approach to take teachers through that workshop and then hopefully that's transferable then to the things that they're doing in the classroom to increase students' ability in using AI and effectiveness of using AI? Is that a goal of it, or?
Well, so think about everything I just said. I gave you a framework for using AI to teach a lesson. When I go into my workshops, I bring an example for each of the content areas and for CTE. So I'm bringing in a math example. You put in the prompt, right? And it's just help me identify what is the formula for this solution, right? So you're basically sticking to what you teach. You're not changing what you teach. You're allowing kids to use AI to help them understand what they're doing. So they're just using it to verify certain things, and they're going to evaluate it to make sure it's correct. But it's also filling in blind spots, how to use this in the real world. You see what I'm saying? And so by showing them examples, like I bring in multiple examples, I bring in lessons I've already created. I teach them the systematic framework of what that can look like in a classroom. I show video examples, and then it's up to them. And the experience I have is when you facilitate it that way, they can see it. They can see it.
Something you just said kind of just struck me here, and maybe help clarify my thinking if I'm off base on this. But you talked about using AI to help you find the formula for the solution. And in my mind, is that almost like using a backwards design model for instruction, and right? And the teachers are familiar with that. That's how we, have constructed a lot of. You start with the end in mind, and then you work from there to get to that point.
It ties back to understanding by design, the work of Jay McTighe and the late Dr. Grant Wiggins. You begin with the outcome. What are we trying to do? Then what is the knowledge and skills I need to arrive there? And then what are the learning experiences I need in order to get there?
And AI can be that tool that helps you get to those points more efficiently.
Right.
Not
So
couldn't by yourself, but just in a more efficient way.
Exactly.
Interesting. So George, I don't want people to think that all you do is all PBL and all AI all the time, right? I know you have a much broader skill set than that, and your areas of expertise are much greater than just those particular areas. Although those things definitely, I think, should be tying into some of the core instruction that is taking place in classrooms here. How do you help bring in some of those concepts, whether they're PBL or AI, or even some STEM concepts, robotics, whatever, is going to help bring about that that what we call core instruction, or what you refer to as core instruction?
Everything needs a foundation, like a house. If the foundation isn't strong, then the house won't stand for long. I've been visiting classrooms over 20 years now. And after looking at countless data collections and just seeing what makes a confident teacher, what makes a really good, solid, very confident teacher, I've arrived at 5 things. And these make your core instruction. Number 1 is a standards aligned lesson. Whether we use scripted resources or we have to design our own every day, a teacher should be able to, a skilled teacher should be able to map a daily lesson based on standards, based on competencies, based on whatever they have, so they can know what they're doing each day. Number 2 is the promotion of literacy and numeracy skills. So yes, reading, writing, and math can be included into number 1. But I think reading, writing, and math is the foundation for everything. And every teacher needs to be a literacy teacher. That doesn't mean that if we don't teach ELA, we now have to assess reading and writing. But what it does mean is I can do 3 things every day. Number 1, make sure our kids have the correct grammar. Number 2, sentence structure. And number 3, citing sources. And the same thing with math. We make a logical connection to numeracy where it makes sense in our daily lessons. Number 3 is to now facilitate my lessons using high yielding strategies. Numbers 1 and 2 pertain to what we teach. Number 3 is how we teach it, using high yielding strategies. Some teachers like Marzano, some teachers like visible learning. The point here is to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. Then number 4 is to monitor student engagement and achievement. If you look into the literature, there's a strong correlation between the two. If young people are not engaged, they're not going to learn. Number 5 is to monitor our impact on learning. Every teacher, I believe, should feel very comfortable getting feedback on how they teach from their students and from trusted colleagues. The key word is trusted, right? So these 5 things is the playbook. It's your core instruction. It's your foundational teaching. I believe if that's not right, imagine having to integrate AI, but I don't know how to map a daily lesson. I don't know how to balance my relationships with students, look at standards, and how to align this all together, and then life skills on top of that. But if I have a foundation, if I have a system in education, we say this is our pedagogy, our pedagogical strategies. Or we can also say instructional design. What is my system for planning lessons, and what is my system for how to facilitate them? If I keep all these things in a toolbox, then I know what to reach for when I'm planning or when I'm teaching.
A teacher has to have an enormous bag of tricks, and whether it involves using AI or whether it involves, a student that seems to be maybe getting a little fidgety and you just need to know, you go down and you put a little stress ball down on their desk for them so it disrupts nobody. But again, it's kind of using all of those different skills and tricks. And I think about even some of the teacher prep that I had decades ago. But I felt like I came out very strong in my knowledge and understanding of my content area in which I teach. But it's just some of those other things that you have to pick up along the way. The building the relationships with the students and understanding how essential, gaining the students' respect is before they're ever going to want to learn anything, and knowing you care before they're ever going to want to learn anything from you, right? And it's just some of those other skills that I think also are important to becoming a great teacher I feel like with your core instruction here that you're talking about, that you're really trying to remind teachers of too. And it's that and part of that too is keeping you have to know how to design a lesson before AI can tell you whether you want to use that or not, which is, I think that's,
And that's why we can't worry about AI doing kids' work. If we're teaching them the frameworks and systems in our class, the thinking frameworks and the problem-solving techniques, then all AI now is a helper. But if you don't teach kids that, then AI is just giving answers to things you don't understand anyway.
And just like you talked about, numeracy and literacy being important in all content areas and all grade levels, is that the same place that AI literacy should be at as well?
Well, I think so, because if you look at data, right? Newer data says that more than 50% of the kids who responded to the survey, even though they're using AI, 58% are saying, I don't understand AI. And that is very problematic because if you look at what industry projects, by 2030, 70% of the work is going to change. It's going to change so drastically that if kids are not understanding how to work with AI or what the pathways and emerging jobs are in AI, then how will they be successful? New jobs are in sustainable computing, energy auditing, data science, and nuclear operations. So if we engage young people in projects to teach them to study the impact of AI, then they will naturally learn about the jobs of the people that I just mentioned.
And they're also going to, in that project situation, they'll be identifying their gaps where they need to make up that learning that they don't. They're starting to realize they don't know what they don't know yet, which is also an essential piece of that.
I told you earlier, they're asking AI for this career. I think I said nurse practitioner. It could be any career. What are the tools I will need? How is it changing? What are the pros and cons? And what are the negatives? Or the cons. What are the pros and what are the cons? So when they learn these things and we are teaching them by really creating these sentence stems and these questions, then we are guiding them to now guide their own version of AI. You see, that's how I understand, or that's how I know that certain people are just regurgitating information. You gotta understand what you know first and what you're trying to achieve. Then you can use any tool, whatever, to help you become successful in that thing. And that's what we have to teach kids.
And one of the things, George, that you brought up too, several times, is the importance of relationships. And can you talk a little bit about how did you come to get invested in emotional intelligence and developing people in that regard so that they can be more effective or more whole, as you might say?
It started really in my own household. I had no idea what emotional intelligence was until 2019. My son and daughter, around that time, they became teenagers. And they started to pay me no never mind. And that was very painful. For anyone listening, no never mind means that whenever I would say anything they don't like, they would just roll their eyes and look the other way. That was pretty painful because before they started doing that, like when they were little, they would just jump up and say yes to everything I said, and they would agree with everything I said. But now they started to buck everything or just ignore it. Being a very reflective person, I realized that I have a knowledge gap. There's something that I'm missing here. Well, anyway, I was reading an article by Dr. Travis Bradberry on the importance of relationships. And in the article, he mentioned emotional intelligence, which all of a sudden, those two words just jumped up at me. And I did a search and I found the work of Daniel Goleman and Dr. Travis and Dr. Bradberry and Gene Greaves have a book titled Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I got the book, and it came with an appraisal that I took, and it taught me what my knowledge gap was, and it rated me. I think I got like a 74 in social awareness, which is not horrible, but it means we have some work to do. So after evaluating myself, I discovered that my feedback to my children was all over the place. It was more ranting for 20 minutes in opposed to really giving them a framework, step by step of what I wanted them to do that I can do in 4 steps. Instead, I would rant, rave, and bring up things from the past. So anyway, once I worked on it myself, I started to realize that a lot of the people I work with, I think that they love the kids. I think that they sympathize with young people when things don't go well. But I don't believe that we all have empathy for young people. Empathy meaning that we understand where they're coming from. Nor do we have high expectations for those kids we don't understand. So looking at the science says that the first thing you need to have is high expectations. You have to believe that they can achieve. And this has work that has been done with animals. It's been done with soldiers, students. When you have high expectations for someone that you believe that they can achieve, then what happens is you have better interactions. And better interactions lead to rapport and then hopefully relationship. And that's the first step to forming any type of learning partnership, business partnership, any type of partnership. You want to form a learning partnership, but in order to do that, you have to get on the same page relationally.
And one of the big things that's coming up too, this is a big conversation nationally, and maybe you've been following, is just the screen conversation. It's kind of started with social media and the mental health challenges there that arise, and then it's kind of moved in more into like the ed tech spaces and screens in the classroom and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's a big conversation on either side going on, where one side wants to get devices completely out of the classroom. One side is saying, well, it's not the devices, it's actually just the instruction and how they're used. And so, and I don't know how much you've been following that conversation, but do you have any thoughts there on that conversation as it relates to social media and mental health challenges for kids, and then also the screen time debate, I guess?
My job is to follow and know. So if you look at China, and this came out yesterday, I believe, they banned 500 social media influencers, even those that have 100 million followers or a million or whatever. They banned anyone that is promoting wealth, showing off with money and cars and all these fancy things. Think about that. The UK and China put guardrails on social media, but the United States didn't. And we have a lot of mental health. If you look at CDC data from just a year ago, more than half of the students that responded are saying they feel hopeless and have depression. I think what we look at, like I know myself, when I'm looking at politics, especially when I'm looking at things overseas, when I'm looking at negative things, it has a negative impact emotionally. And at the end of the day, would we know these things are happening if we're not on a phone 24/7? So I believe, like I just said, it's my job to know. Every day after work, after the gym, after I did the things to fill my own cup. And so you see right there, I fill my own cup. After I fill my cup, then I get on YouTube and then I watch the news and see what's going on. 20, 30 minutes tops. There's got to be some guardrails on this stuff. So if kids are doing that in class, then yeah, that shouldn't be. But if we have our core instruction right and we have those relationships, It first starts with relationship. My daughter just started teaching. And what she is finding in 4th grade is that the kids can't stop talking. You can't stop talking. Well, when I was a student, we also couldn't stop talking, but we did so for the teachers that we liked and respected because they liked us and they respected us. So it's not as easy as I'm saying, obviously, but it starts with relationship and then every day having a game plan, your core instruction and your daily lesson mapped so you know what you're doing with kids. I think if we completely get rid of devices in schools, then how is that real world? In the real world, devices is how we work. Young people need to learn how to use devices to do their work or part of their work.
And I think you're spot on there. I think just, if you go to straight all out bans on screen time, for example, in the classroom, or if you want to talk about, using devices or using AI to help you with the type of work that you're doing, we're not teaching them how to use them appropriately, effectively, in the areas that they need. And so it must be a much more nuanced conversation that that needs to take place than just simply saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, and like it's limited to only these 5 things or whatever it happens to be. It's got to be much more nuanced.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, and I think as our time is kind of starting to come to a close, it's gone by so fast here. There's one more area that I do want to touch on here before we get to our lightning round stuff, and that has to do with the tagline for your company that you've started, Lifelong Learning Defined, is elevate your potential. So since your company is Lifelong Learning Defined, define what you mean here by elevating your potential.
Well, your lifelong learning is always your personal and your professional growth. I believe that they go hand in hand, right? And that elevates your potential right there.
Just that simple.
It's that simple. You have to show up in life, or you should be, especially, I think after 40, there's no excuse. All right, so let me back up a little bit. I forgive my parents. My parents are boomers, okay? And they just didn't have the internet. They didn't have YouTube. They didn't know what they were doing. They were just trying to survive and pay bills. And the thing that hurt my relationship with them a lot of times in my younger days was there was a mentality about my way or the highway. You do as I say, not as I do, right? Like it was like this way of being where they never really took an interest in what I like. Now, I realize as a father of 2 and as a teacher and as a coach for many educators, I realize that as a 50-year-old man, I'm out of touch with youth culture. I'm out of touch with the needs of young people, women, in the sense of out of touch in the sense that I shouldn't be telling people how they should be doing things or being. I should be listening and modeling things I want to see in the world. I have spent so much time watching Stranger Things, Wicked, things I would normally not even care about, because I know if I don't take an interest in what my children are into, then we won't have a relationship. Because when you're young, you're just being and experiencing new things and you're loving every minute of it. And anything that derails that or tries to put a hamper on it, you're ignoring, even your own family. So I have learned how to shut my mouth and accept that my opinions don't have to be voiced and heard every single day. I can learn more by listening. So anyway.
Is that what teachers need to do then too?
Yes.
Because they're dealing with students that are from that different, you call them boomers, right? Or Gen Xers or millennials and what are coming Gen Alpha and Beta down the road here. At least that's what, futurists or whatever people are calling them, right? Is
Mhm.
that the key into reaching to those students is more listening?
I believe so. We have to get out of the mindset of back in my day.
Mhm.
And we just have to accept that times have changed. Just like when we were younger, we thought the adults were boring and corny and what they were into was whack, right? It's the same thing. So it's not that our experiences don't matter. They do, but they matter to us and to our peer group. If we go in and try to learn about what the kids are doing and what they're into, that's the empathy, then we can empower them with the things that they need in order to learn. That's the piece that we know. That's the piece that we're good at.
No more of this just saying, oh, that generation, we can't deal with them. They're too far gone.
Listen, the human beings come from dysfunction. If you look at the first family ever, the most dysfunctional ever, they got kicked out of paradise. Imagine how Adam must have felt sitting on earth, realizing, look what I just lost.
Look what those kids just did.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then like one brother killed the other. Like, we come from dysfunction. We have to understand that. And once we accept that and understand that, and then lead with love and empathy, you'll be all right.
All right. Well, thanks, George. We want to get into our lightning round here. A little bit of like personal mixed in with a couple professional questions, but I think I'm gonna kick this off, Jeremy. Right?
Yep.
Okay. So you, George, with these like the lightning rounds, you can expound on these as much as you would like to, or they can be like quick answers. Totally up to you. But what's a PBL project you wish you could have done as a student in high school or in grade school?
A passion to purpose project where I would get to learn how to learn, exploring my own interests and passions, and then finding out what purpose truly is. Purpose is helping others, but your passion and purpose is what you like. So learning how to merge these two, I wish I could have found out in middle school or high school.
What's one word or one thing, one topic, if you want to elaborate a little bit, that describes what's missing from most professional development for teachers today?
Well, I can't say most, but in things I've seen, authenticity. The person that is providing professional learning should have receipts, proof that they've done that in their actual work.
All right. First job you ever had?
A stock boy in a supermarket.
One of my first jobs was in a grocery store, also bagging groceries, and we were in a small town, so it was carrying them out. And then when it wasn't busy, you were stocking the shelves and basing all the product. Which was great. I mean, it taught me a lot of valuable life lessons and also things that I didn't want to do for the rest of my life as well.
There you go.
What's your guilty pleasure, a TV show or movie?
Anything involving the power universe. The power universe is a multiverse for drug dealers in New York. And they have multiple shows, and I'm not sure why, but I just enjoy watching that.
Best meal you ever had? It's a tough one.
Afghan food in New York City.
All right.
And those food trucks, they've inspired everything there.
What's something that people would be surprised to know about you?
That I believe that relationships are the most important thing in life. And as I'm interacting with people, anything I do, I lead with empathy, with understanding, with respect. And then I'm using how people respond, because relationships and life are like tennis. I hit the ball over and you hit it back. I'm watching and analyzing how people respond. And I'm using that as information to know whether or not we can have a relationship.
All right. So in 1 hour, you have a keynote. Jeremy and I are helping just get the disc ready. And you have to tell us what your keynote walk-up song is so we can put it on for you when you're going to walk out on the stage. What's the keynote song?
If I'm at a great conference and everyone is happy and everyone's in the moment, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough by Michael Jackson is the go-to. And if we're in a rough spot, people are angry, upset, Hard Knock Life by Jay-Z.
Good calls. So the next part is some series of this or that questions, and you can only pick one. Right?
Okay.
So we're just going to go rapid fire.
Only
here.
one? Only one?
Only one. Yep. We try to back our guest into a corner. And really put them on the spot. No, I'm just kidding. We have a lot of people say both. and because we're trying to, show that relationships matter and we're being empathetic, we let them choose that. So, are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm both. Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Would you rather take a road trip or go on a flight?
Flight. I can afford flights now, so I'd say flight.
Would you rather cook at home or eat out?
Both. I do meal prep all week, so on the weekend, I'm not cooking anything.
Perfect. Would you prefer to text or call someone?
Phone call. I'm old school.
And would you rather be at the beach or in the mountains?
The beach.
Nice.
We've had a lot of guests recently that have all been mountains, and I'm a beach guy myself. So, and the last one here that we have, are you the first one out the door at a party or the last one to leave?
If it's family, I'm the last one to leave. And if it's people I don't know, I'm the first one to leave.
All right. Well, thanks, George. We really appreciate you joining us and having this conversation. We want to just give you a chance to plug anything. So is there anything that you want to mention, upcoming events or things that people should be aware of to check out at all, or socials too?
Yeah. If you follow me on all the platforms at George Does PBL, Jorge Does PBL, you see all my events, all my videos, things I'm doing. And if you're interested, if you're a teacher, Project-Based Learning Plus, and if you're a leader, Instructional Innovation Plus are the books. You can find them on my website, on Amazon, or on corewin.com.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put those in the description and everything too, so everyone can access the books and access George's site and all that. So thanks again, George, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, George.